Broadcasting the information the mainstream media won't touch. This is The Richie Allen Show in association with DavidIke.com.
Let's get our first guest on. I've known him many years. He's somebody I have a lot of admiration for. I always mention when we speak, I first came across him tearing Fox News anchors apart over the real truth of what happened on September the 11th. He has been and will always be a very respected academic, author and researcher. You can find him at truthjihad.com. He's a terrific broadcaster. You can catch his shows there. You can find out at truthjihad.com how to listen to his programs. And he is a regular contributor to veteranstoday.com. It's actually been quite a while, strangely enough. Let's welcome back to the program our friend Kevin Barrett. Kevin, welcome back. How are you?
Well, thank you, Richie. I'm well. It's wonderful to be back with you.
It's been a while, hasn't it? For no reason other than it's just been a while, and that's the way things happen. But I'm glad you're back on.
Well, time goes pretty fast when you're trying to keep up with all the false flags.
It does, and of course you're putting your own programs out on truthjihad.com. I recommend our listeners take a listen to you there. So, which is good. I like that. I like the fact that we speak to other broadcasters and content creators. Kevin, you've pulled no punches in your article on Veterans Today about what you see as the support of Zionism by Infowars.com. Now, I've had a lot to say about this in recent months. I've had a lot to say, but I'm not going to say much about it today because the floor is yours. You've challenged Alex Jones to debate you on what's going on. This is all to do with the Infowars endorsement of Donald Trump and their stance and their policy now at Infowars to repeat and regurgitate everything that Donald Trump and his team have said. You're a bit fed up with it. That's putting it mildly. What's going on, mate?
Well, I'm really sad to see Infowars in the state that it's in now. I used to admire Alex Jones. I still admire his talent. I mean, the man can yammer and go on like a carnival barker better than anybody. I mean, he's great and he emotes and you can't stop watching him until you get tired of it, which you eventually do. But it's like watching a sort of a slow motion train wreck that just goes on and on. It's hard to take your eyes off it. I mean, he's really good at that. He's a genius in his own weird way, and he did a real service to the world by hammering on that 9/11 issue for years after it happened. And his information about it, he wouldn't go there with anything relating to the Israel angle. But aside from that, he did pretty well. And I always liked the guy, basically. And I was on his show in 2007. But since then, and especially in the last couple of years, he and his operation have gone basically over to the neocons. I mean, basically, he's now spewing out the propaganda that 9/11 was designed to create. So he's now on the team of the 9/11 perpetrators. And that really saddens me.
Where is it coming from, Kevin? One of the things because when I've done pieces on Infowars, I focused a lot on Watson, more so than Jones. I focused on some of the things Watson has been saying. These are people who used to understand. They used to talk about the fact that you can't vote your way out of this situation, this paradigm that we're in, that, choosing between two candidates served up to you by the military-industrial complex and by globalists is like choosing between the firing squad and the electric chair. They used to say this, and this used to be policy. The Trump support came out of left field, and I get called naive a lot. I never saw that coming. I never saw them abandoning 2 decades worth of principles to say, all right, well, we'll abandon everything we ever said. This is the guy. He's the champion. He's going to stand up to the cabal, and therefore we're going to throw our weight in behind him. When do you think that? What do you think motivated that? Is it money?
Well, yeah, I think that the reason that the Infowars operation has moved in the direction that it has is that they certainly know that you just won't be allowed to have that size audience and to make good money and to live well, have your cake and eat it too. You can pose as opposition while you're actually reaping all the benefits of being part of the system. You're allowed to do that if you stop at certain red lines. And I think Alex Jones is in exactly the same position in that respect that Amy Goodman is in, that the editor of the Progressive magazine or The Nation on the left are in. All those people are limited in what they can say and in what issues they can deal with honestly by foundation money. And George Soros, and I don't hate George Soros, and I got pilloried recently for saying that some of the stuff George Soros supports is okay, and his philosophy is actually defensible. I would debate him on it. I don't share his philosophy, but I think he's basically a rational person doing some really horrible things and some okay things too. But one of the bad things that Soros and his folks have done is they give money to like Democracy Now! And, Democracy Now! Takes money from the Ford Foundation as well. They took $500,000 from the Ford Foundation right after 9/11, earmarked for reportage on 9/11. And Amy Goodman knew she couldn't breathe a word about the controlled demolition of Building 7 that she witnessed. And I think, somebody asked Amy about this once, and, why don't you cover 9/11? And Amy Goodman said, are you trying to get me killed? Right. I don't know if she'd be killed necessarily, but her operation would be killed. She couldn't be making big money, flying over the world, big audience. They wouldn't let that happen, or at least they'd push back real hard against her. And the same thing with Alex. So I think that's the ultimate reason that Alex is moving in that direction. He knows on which side his bread is buttered.
Soros is an evil, in my opinion anyway, is an evil bastard, because the nation building that we've seen around the world, regime change. We should never use that word regime. I don't know why I just did. I'm an idiot. It must be because I'm just back after my break. Changing and overthrowing democratically elected governments, not always democratically elected governments, but all of that can be traced back to not just Soros, but organisations like his and other non-governmental organisations. I mean, the White Helmets, which are, a propaganda group, stroke human rights abusing, stroke murderous band of outlaws. You can trace them right back to Soros. Where did Jones... I mean, I've interviewed Jones probably more than anybody, I would guess, because I've been interviewing him since 2007, 2008, and it used to be a bi-monthly thing for a long time. And Jones is very clear about this, Kevin, as you and I have been over the years, that terror groups like, for example, Islamic State. Now, these Wahhabi jihad, I know you're going to take me up on the term jihad, but that's what they call themselves. These lunatics, they are a very, very tiny minority who subscribe to a crazy version of religion. These people have been sought out, funded, trained and armed by our secret intelligence agencies forever in order to cause chaos and destabilise countries, and also to build up this phantom enemy, Islam. It used to be, of course, Red Russia. It's now Islam. Jones used to understand this, Kevin, and used to talk about it. But now it's fairly black and white as far as Jones is concerned. It's the Muslims, and the religion of peace strikes again. This is bizarre, right?
Yeah, well, it is. Yeah, and you're right. The problem is that black and white portrayal of things, and it's easy to fall into that. But if you actually study the details of these various conflicts where various types of so-called jihadis have waged so-called jihad, and you study it honestly, you'll have a lot of sympathy for many so-called jihadis, like the forces of Abdul Qadir that fought the French genocidal occupation of Algeria in the 19th century. You would probably have a lot of sympathy for the forces of the Chechen rebels who tried to resist what became a genocide under communism, but they were essentially being genocided by the Russians even in the 19th century. And they were a Sufi, they practiced Sufi Islam, which is the polar opposite of Saudi Wahhabi Islam. But then they had to wage a kind of religious jihad to try to defend themselves against genocide. And one could argue that something like that was also at play in Afghanistan when the Afghan people fought off the Soviet Union, although there are sensible people who take a more nuanced view about who was the aggressor and so on. In any case, there are these cases where this militarized concept of jihad has been invoked by folks who are clearly defending themselves against aggression, and everybody should support that jihad. Then there are a lot of other cases, and you've mentioned them in Syria today and elsewhere, where really, people with a ludicrously simplistic kind of obscurantist interpretation of Islam have been brainwashed and are basically serving as auxiliaries in this, Zionist Western bankster empire as it hammers against its enemies. And some of those people are just really, they're liver eaters and head choppers, and they really are about as bad as people like Watson say.
Yeah.
But you should never fall into the trap of just saying that this is jihad or this is Islam. No, these are particular cases of people doing the wrong thing.
But Kevin, they weren't getting any foothold in any country until the CIA, Mossad, MI5 and others enabled them to, through phony colour revolutions. And there's some great researchers have done some brilliant work on this. William Engdahl has done some great work on this. He doesn't like me very much, but that's okay. I forgive him for that. We've had a couple of rows about different things on radio, but Engdahl has done brilliant work on all of this. It's untenable to say, any organisation like Infowars to say, well, what we have here is we have this religion, this 1.3, 1.4 billion people, whatever it is. They've decided now it's time to take over the world and start killing people. It's untenable. The Wahhabi Saudi crazies, which you described far more eloquently than me, wouldn't be getting a foothold or have gotten a foothold anywhere if it wasn't for the enablers. And the enablers, of course, are the aforementioned intelligence agencies.
Absolutely. Yeah, the Wahhabi movement itself probably would never have gone anywhere if the British hadn't stepped in and started using it, and it became a tool to take down the Ottoman Empire. So that fanatical brand of Islam, which has a tendency to lash out against other Muslims, first of all, that's what these people are. The so-called the Salafi Wahhabi jihadis are often called takfiris because they pronounce takfir, which means to sort of excommunicate or say, you say you're a Muslim, but you're not one. So these folks have that tendency to hate other Muslims more than anyone else. So they're perfect if you are trying to divide and conquer the Muslims. And that's what the British did. That's how they really built the Wahhabi movement originally. That's how they installed this puppet throne in Saudi Arabia, which the U.S. empire inherited, and which is now cozying up with the Zionists. That's why these people are the ones that they use. They can't use more sort of sensible folks like, Gaddafi or the Iranian Revolution folks or Hezbollah. Those sort of people are much more sensible. They're not fanatics who hate everybody, starting with their fellow Muslims. But that's what the Wahhabis are. So people need to realize that these fanatical so-called Islamic terrorists, far from being embodiments of Islam, are what they are precisely because their first enemies, the people they hate on the first and the most, are all other Muslims, meaning 99% of the world's Muslims. So these are basically anti-Islamic terrorists, not Islamic terrorists.
Should we, and I include myself in this, should we ignore Jones and Watson because they've become a kind of a parody of themselves anyway? And of course they're going to have a certain audience. There's going to be a certain, I don't want to get into trouble here by, categorizing and describing a typical Alex Jones listener, but a very interesting picture comes to mind. The old General Lee car flag and dungarees and that sort of stuff is coming to my mind now. But, last year Jones did two stories which we had a go at here. One was that he had it on very good authority that Hillary Clinton smelled of sulphur. I mean, this is just bollocks, Kevin. This is nonsense, right? But he's not doing it for a laugh. And another story he did with no substance to it whatsoever, no evidence, no nothing, was that gays, according to him, in general, were kidnapping young children in order to teach them, and I don't want to be vulgar, ladies and gentlemen, fisting. I mean, this guy's just a clown, right? So who's listening to him anyway? People are watching, but are they listening to him, right? Yeah.
Right. Martin Hill, a friend of mine, he's a kind of a paleo-Catholic out of Southern California, and he has a great blog. He wrote that piece recently where he transcribed a bunch of Alex's over the top ranting about how the world will end if they arrest Netanyahu. How wonderful Israel is, and how the evil globalists want to arrest Netanyahu, and if they do, that's the end of the world, nuclear war, and all this craziness. So anyway, Martin transcribed that stuff, and I really recommend his piece, which I linked. People start looking for my work, they'll find that pretty quick. So Martin points out that he says, I was just getting my hair cut, and these two 20-year-old female hairdressers with safety pins through their noses or whatever it was, and these crazy tattoos or pink hair, or I forget exactly what his description was, but something like that. And as they were cutting his hair, they were going on and on about how much they loved Alex Jones. And he said, well, this shows me who Alex's listenership is. The adults who've had time to really think these things through may have moved beyond Alex Jones, and maybe that's actually a tribute to Alex. Maybe he's a really good gateway drug to the real thing, which is your show, Richie, and my show.
I hope so, Kevin. I hope so. I mean, we talk about Netanyahu. It emerged in the last couple of hours that he wants the soldier convicted of manslaughter today for the most disgusting and cowardly thing that anybody who wears a uniform can do, which is to shoot an incapacitated man in the head while he's on the ground, unconscious, and no danger to anybody, regardless of what he might or might not have done. It doesn't matter. This guy was convicted of manslaughter, probably should have been convicted for murder. Netanyahu, as we call him here, has called for the pardoning of the soldier. Trump said last week, as you know, on Twitter, that he wants... No, he didn't say that. He said, in an unprecedented move by a president-elect, by the way, when the United Nations, for the 500,000th time, condemned settlements in the West Bank, and for once the US didn't veto the edict from the UN, Trump tweets out, don't worry, guys, pretty much it'll be okay in a few weeks when I'm in. Can I ask you this, Kevin? I believe that I was duped. I believe, because I was certain Hillary Clinton was going to win the presidency. I was certain that the cabal had chosen her to further their Middle East destruction agenda. I think we were all fooled, and I think Trump was the chosen one all along. He was the Zionist choice. Am I wrong?
No, that might be one of those many conspiracy theories that are actually true, Richie. This is what VT was saying. Veterans Today, where I am an editor, takes a lot of flack because it's full of people who used to be in the intelligence community, and some of them used to do some pretty bad things, and it's people out of that world. But I honestly think that VT is an indispensable resource and, rates very highly compared to everything else available. And, they were screaming from the rooftops about Trump from the get-go that Trump's entire history indicates precisely who he is and what he's going to do. His only job in his entire life has been frontman for the mob. He was given his hotel casino business from his mentor, Roy Cohn, and that it was all fronting for the Meyer-Lansky mob, which is intermixed with the Mossad and the CIA. Permindex is the branch of the CIA that worked with the mob to kill President Kennedy. That's basically who gave Trump his job. That's who he's been fronting for. So his people, the people pulling his strings, are people like Bibi Netanyahu, people like the Bronfman family in Canada, which is the ethnically Jewish Zionist mob family that runs North America, sort of the way that Meyer-Lansky used to. And then, of course, there's Sheldon Adelson, the Las Vegas version of this. These are the people that basically own Donald Trump and always have and always will. And so he's the candidate of this extremist Netanyahu brand of ultra-Zionism, and he always has been. And all of this distraction that he fed us, I think, was designed to obscure that. And it did a really good job. It kind of fooled me to a certain extent. It fooled a lot of people. But I think as he comes into office and moves the embassy to Jerusalem, thereby declaring war on not only the entire Islamic world, but really the entire Christian world, because Christians should be just as upset as Muslims that the Holy Land is being, ethnically cleansed and genocided by this group of ultra-racist folks who think that they're the Chosenites. He's an extremist who's probably going to go along with Bibi's attempt to start a war on Iran, which would mean war on Russia. So as it turns out, Hillary Clinton, the one that we thought was the candidate of World War III, may not have been. It may actually have been Donald Trump. And I think we need to take that skeptical attitude, and I hope he proves us wrong.
Absolutely right. You could have mentioned, and I know you have in the past, and it's worth mentioning again, because of the appointments he's made. I mean, he surrounded himself with Goldman Sachs and neocons, as you mentioned. Trump was basically chosen by the banks to gentrify New York, wasn't he? I mean, it was him that they gave millions and millions, in fact, hundreds of millions of dollars, good loans on top of bad loans, to basically homogenize New York City. And that was brilliantly illustrated by Adam Curtis in a recent documentary for the BBC. And this was known about Trump. And whatever excuse, I might have for not seeing Trump coming, the likes of Alex Jones and some of the more senior guys around him, American-born, they certainly have no excuse, I don't think, for supporting this guy. Trump, of course, I'm talking about. I just want to do a quick recap, Kev. We've got about 10 minutes left. It's exactly 14 and a half minutes to the top of the hour. Our guest this hour is Kevin Barrett. Go to truthjihad.com. Kevin's a brilliant guy. Do check out veteranstoday.com as well. There are a lot of different voices on Veterans Today. I read it, but I choose who I read on there and who I don't read on there. But that's a good thing as well. There are a lot of voices on Veterans Today, a lot of really, really good stuff. And there might be some stuff maybe mightn't suit you, but it's a really good resource for information. I'm happy to endorse that. Keep the tweets coming in. Natalie tweets, she completely loves the analogy Kevin made about the Infowars program being a gateway drug to real and deeper truth and programs. Not so. Hi to Emma Slomsky, by the way. How you doing, Emma? Sent me an interesting meme which I retweeted there as well. Justin says, great guest is Kevin, rational and articulate. Great stuff. He's not always rational now. He is.
Wait a minute. Oh, you mean whenever I disagree with you?
Exactly. I've never fallen into that category. You know that. I appreciate disagreements as much as anybody. JP says, and Trump's made socks picture together New Year's Eve. I want Trump's going to come up a bit later on as well, because he's going to come up in my interview with Andrew Wakefield in hour 2 about vaccines. We'll get into the more Trump a little bit later on. Kevin, you touched on something very interesting there. David, I touched on it last night. While Trump appears to be chummy or at least cordial with Moscow, you touched on something really important. The neocons that have surrounded him, or he surrounded himself with, they're all, including the Mad Dog Defense Secretary, they're all focusing on Iran. And as you just said, well, that's just another way to get at Russia and, of course, China. These are serious times, aren't they?
Absolutely. And the war in Syria is about not only Russia's interest in having their one base to their one water port there, but also the Iranian interest in being able to connect with Hezbollah, Iran's ally in Lebanon. So Russia and Iran both had very strong reasons not to want to allow NATO and Israel to regime change Syria. But the main purpose, I think, of that regime change and destruction of Syria was essentially to balkanize the country and take it out. And in order to get at Iran, Iran has been the big kahuna. 9/11 was designed to take out 7 countries in 5 years, as General Clark told us. And number 7, and the most important, was Iran. That's the country that the Zionists are most terrified of, because it's the only country in the region with a government that has the guts to provide a platform for people who represent the majority opinion. In fact, the 99% majority opinion in the region, which is that the Zionist entity as it stands right now is unacceptable. They need to follow the UN resolutions, allow right of return, restitution to the returnees, and pull out of every square centimeter of land that they stole in their war of aggression in 1967, and then we'll give them a truce. We won't fight them anymore, but we'll still say that this is wrong. You never should have invaded this place, and you shouldn't have an ethnic supremacy state in which people who have supposedly a Jewish mother and they were born anywhere in the world have massive privileges and will be showered with money if they go there, whereas native-born people, Palestinians, Christians, as well as Muslims or atheists or whoever, are essentially second-class citizens at best, or ethnic cleansing victims stuck in concentration camps at worst. This is wrong. So that's the position of the Iranian government. No other government in the region can say that, because they'll get clobbered by the U.S., and which is owned by Israel. But the Iranians are independent, so they can say that. So the Israelis hate them. They want to take them out. 9/11 was designed to knock out those 7 countries and finally to destroy Iran. To destroy Iran, they have to first destroy Syria. That's why they're doing it. And now we've got these people around Trump who want to just go and destroy Iran directly. Henry Kissinger represents that crowd, and he's now cozying up with the Trump people. They basically want to try to split Iran and China off from Russia, and then they want to have a war with Iran. I don't think Russia's going to go along with it, and we could be in for really rough sailing.
Let's talk briefly, while we have about 5 minutes, about fake news. Now, we saw this coming a long time ago. In fact, I'm sure over the years we've talked about the eventuality that governments would start to shut down and find excuses to shut down alternative opinions and programs that put out an alternative point of view. We've always seen it come in the 1984 Ministry of Information and all of that. Well, it's arrived, Kevin, hasn't it, with the fake news agenda. It won't be long, I don't think, before we see a content creator shut down because they will be accused of widely disseminating information that the state or the powers that be decide is inaccurate or is untrue. We've arrived at this moment. Is it scary, Kevin, or is there opportunity within what's happening? Is there opportunity to maybe show more and more people who maybe don't normally listen to people like you and I, to maybe, as they're unmasking themselves, these lunatics, is it an opportunity more than something to be scared of?
Well, Richie, I've been in favor of this war on fake news ever since 2006 when on the Hannity and Colm show, I told Sean Hannity that he should be taken off the air.
For lying.
So, yeah, I mean, in a sense, it would be great to take fake news off the air, starting with Fox and a whole lot of other mainstream so-called news reporting. But, the fact is that you can't really get into this, let's shut down this voice or that voice, without all kinds of problems with free speech. And we do have a constitution here in the United States that enshrines free speech. So I would hope that just as I'm not allowed to somehow use force to shut down Fox News, that the government isn't allowed to use force to shut me down. That's kind of the deal that we have here and in other countries that try to allow for free speech. But there is a problem with so-called fake news in that we're overwhelmed with so much information in the internet age. And there's so much spin, so much PR, so much that's funded. Almost everything is dependent on funding one way or another. Maybe, you and I are lucky that we have shows that really aren't very much. We can say what we want. But generally, Alex Jones and so many other people who especially have a major funding pipeline have to toe the line. And so they're going to spin their news in that direction. So it's really hard to separate the fake news from the real news. At extremes, it's really easy. When somebody puts out clickbait stories about stuff that never happened, just sensational stuff that turns out not to be true, that's one extreme. But the problem is, I don't think they're going to shut it down, Richie. I think what they're going to do is use algorithms to hide it. So you won't find the stuff they don't want you to find. That's already been done. The Russia Today special 9/11 and Operation Gladio was going viral, heading for millions of views on 9/11 a couple of years ago. And suddenly it disappeared from all the search engines, disappeared from Google, disappeared from the YouTube internal search engine. And when people tried to email the URL for that episode, their emails fell into black holes in cyberspace. They never arrived and they never got bounced. So the NSA or whoever it is, they have tools for that kind of stuff. And this war on fake news may be allowed, or it may be used to allow them to use those tools to make it much harder for people to wander into and discover information like the stuff that we put out.
Well, I'll tell you something else, Kevin. On that, it's great that producers like you still use your own website, truthjihad.com, because my friend and colleague Hayden Hewitt from liveleak.com, which is one of the biggest websites in the world, Hayden says one of the greatest erosions of free speech has come about because we've given it up willingly. We've signed up to Facebook. And by signing up to Facebook, we pretty much abandoned the idea of having our own websites. And we think we have a website now because we have a Facebook page. But you just said their algorithms mean that very, very few people get to see. If I put a YouTube video out tomorrow now, Kevin Barrett says this, you have to hear this, and I put it on Facebook, a fraction of the people I'm connected on Facebook will in fact get it. We need to get back to having our own websites, don't we?
Yes, absolutely. Social media has really degraded the internet. And 10 years ago, the internet was so much more useful than it is today. People used websites to aggregate really important, useful information. There were these media outlets in each city where you could find out what was happening in your city. You could go join a protest, and they were moderated. So the good information got through, the bad information didn't. Whereas on Facebook, there are thousands of cat videos, like just washing over you. You can't find the good stuff because everybody is posting something, most of it trivial. I think that it would be great if we could get away from Facebook. And I try to diversify my internet holdings. So if they mess with one thing I'm doing, I still have some other things left. I put radio out on 3 different networks: No Lies Radio, Veterans Today Radio, and Revolution Radio. I have my website, truthjihad.com. I have a bunch of blogspot sites that link to truthjihad.com. And then I post most of my stuff at Veterans Today as well. So it would be fairly complicated for them to try to knock all my stuff off at once. And then Press TV, of course. I'm always on Press TV.
And we know where to find you. You see, this is the beauty of it. We know, we want to see what Kevin Barrett is saying today. Go to truthjihad.com or go to veteranstoday.com. We know where to find you. And that's why content creators, including myself, need to bat or box a bit more clever with this. I was supposed to do this before Christmas. I'm going to do it in the next few weeks. Going to put together a kind of a singing and dancing website. And I'm coming off Facebook in terms of personally, I'm coming off it. I'm getting my personal page, just getting off it altogether. People can find me daily on the website because it's more difficult to deal with. It was great catching up with you again, Kev. It's been too long. You need to stay in touch with me as much as me staying in touch with you. So it's not as long before you come back again. Great work you're doing there. I hope Alex mans up and gives you a call and gets you on for a rocking debate on Infowars. If he's half the man that I used to think he was, he will do that, because that's the only way we'll ever change anything, is when we have the courage to talk to people that we don't agree with. Love chatting with you, Kev. Thanks for your time again.
Well, thank you, Richie. It's always good talking with you. And I guess you've given me license to bug you to get me back on the air.
Anytime you want. You don't have to wait to be asked. Cheers, Kev.
Thanks.
Bye for now. The lovely Kevin Barrett on the line to us there from Wisconsin.